Hi, I'm Nate Seberg, and this is One Day Ahead. Welcome to One Day Ahead, The Lord of the Flies, Chapter 5. In this web series for teachers and students staying a day ahead of the class, we dive into a summary and analysis of William Golding's 1954 classic. If you're teaching this book, check out my Lord of the Flies unit. It's got everything you need, link below. As ever, these are not spoiler-free videos, fair warning. But if you're good to go, then climb up on the twister and tell everyone your address, because it's time to head to Chapter 5, Beasts from Water. So Chapter 5 is essentially one long meeting. It begins with Ralph walking along the beach, having a think. As he goes along, he takes stock of his own body, his frayed shorts that are rubbing his legs raw, his shirt so stiff from decay it feels like cardboard. He dwells on his long hair and how he dislikes perpetually pushing it up from his eyes. Golding is showing us how Ralph is starting to take responsibility for the state of his own affairs and resolving to improve them. The kid's growing up. Ralph knows this meeting he's walking to is going to be important. It has to go well because he can feel things starting to slide sideways on the island. The sun sets, the meeting begins. Ralph brandishes the conch shell, and he begins by going full-on disappointed dad with the other kids. He lays out a laundry list of the things the group agreed to do but has let slide. No hauling of fresh water, no follow-through on the shelters, no consistent use of the agreed-upon bathroom location, and the big one, no signal fire. A failure that very well may have cost them the chance at rescue last chapter. Look at us. How many are we? And yet we can't keep a fire going to make smoke. Don't you understand? Can't you see we ought to die before we let the fire go out? Then he gets deep-ish. He moves from the practical concerns to a more abstract and fundamental existential threat. He talks about fear. He wants to address and straight up decide on fear, which is kind of a blunt force approach to something pretty elemental, but the kid's trying. The fear really began with the littluns, who have been talking about a beast in the night. Ralph understands that this fear is a poison. It is a threat to the group, so they have to address it. Jack tries first, and his approach is essentially to yell at them, saying everyone gets scared sometimes and that they should just shut up and put up with it. Piggy goes next, and he cites science to prove that there is no beast and thus nothing to be afraid of. Not super effective. Ralph's approach is different. He challenges the littluns to come forward with their beast stories so he can show how silly they really are. The first kid who comes forward sleptwalked into the night, then woke up and genuinely did hear something in the forest. We learned that what he really heard was Simon coming back from his zen, leafy, hidey namaste retreat spot in the middle of the night. With that cleared up, they move on to the next kid. It's Percival. You remember him? He's the kid from Chapter 4 who had not been very attractive, even to his mother. So Old Ugly comes forward, but is quickly overwhelmed by the fear and the attention. When he's asked his name, he goes into something of a Rain Man-esque chant, just repeating again and again, Percival Weems Madison, the Vicarage, Harcourt, St. Anthony's, Hunt, Telephone. He finally breaks down into tears. The group pushes him anyway on the beast that he claims to have seen, and his story just doesn't hold up. Something that size, on an island this small, you've really seen it? Where could it be hiding? Where could it live? They got this kid on the ropes. They're showing him to be a fool. Nothing that big could survive on the island. Why haven't they seen it? What an idiot! Rationality is about to claim victory, but then, through a yawn, Old Ugly comes out with the absolutely devastating, the beast comes out of the sea. Well, it's a brutal rejoinder, and Ralph, despite himself, actually turns around and gazes at the sea behind him. The assembly looked with him, considering the vast stretches of water, the high sea beyond, unknown indigo of infinite always want to say impossibility. Freaking alliteration. Unknown indigo of infinite possibility. So that didn't go as planned. Next, it's Simon's turn. He apparently has done some deep thinking in his secret retreat spot because the kid really hits the nail on the head. He says, and I'm piecing it together here because there's a lot of yelling in the scene, maybe there is a beast. What I mean is, maybe it's only us. Well, obviously, right, kids historically not great with metaphors, so this goes right over their head. Next, the wheels really come off. The crowd suggests the beast is a ghost, and Ralph, in a last bid for rationality, amid all the chaos and babbling, turns to democracy to try to save them. He decides to put it to a vote to decide if ghosts are real, which is insane, but also kind of a nice touch by Golding. By agreeing to vote, it's a tacit yet unconscious admission that all of this is really just coming out of their own heads. And also, they vote yes, ghosts are real. So the death knell of law and order comes when Jack seizes control by shouting through the din. He's reminded that speaking without the conch shell violates the rules. Bollocks to the rules. We're strong. We hunt. If there's a beast, we'll hunt it down. We'll close in and beat and beat and beat. With that, Jack leaps from the platform and leads the assembly pell-mell running into the night, whooping and screaming, mock hunting and laughing. Only Ralph, Simon, and Piggy remain. Piggy urges Ralph to blow the shell and call them back, but Ralph decides against it, realizing that should he blow the conch shell now and they don't return, that's it. His authority evaporates, and with it, their only chance of rescue. The chapter closes with the three kids huddled close together, listening to the repeated, inarticulate gibbering. Percival Weems Madison of the Vicarage, Harcourt, St. Anthony's. And that's chapter 5. So each chapter, we're going to explore the themes and characters by going just a step or two beyond what's on the page. This is Deep Dive Quotes. Our first quote is a compilation of Simon's thoughts during the meeting. Maybe there is a beast. What I mean is, maybe it's only us. So this is perhaps my least favorite moment in the whole book. The thing is, it's so dead on right. It so explicitly articulates the underlying message of the text that in my opinion, it's kind of a problem. Near the end of the whole book, when the world truly falls apart, when we see the undeniable truth of the statement that man is a wolf to man, that we are beasts to our core, well, the impact of that revelation is kind of lessened because back in chapter 5, Golding had his most fundamentally good character straight up say it. It's like on the page. But I also think this line right here is part of why this book is taught so much. First off, it's boys killing each other, so teacher marketing opportunities abound. But secondly, the underlying themes are so ham-handedly delivered that they just club you over the head. You cannot miss them, and as an English teacher, that annoys me. Next up, Ralph impressed me when he saw the danger of attempting to recall the meeting. If I blow the conch and they don't come back, then we've had it. We shan't keep the fire going. We'll be like animals. We'll never be rescued. Here, Ralph highlights the fragility of power. It's a brittle thing. It exists only if we agree that it does. Because the truth is, money is just paper. Police badges are just metal. Judges are just old people in silly dresses. We imbue our institutions and traditions with power through common consent. And Ralph sees here that this moment is not the time to test the depth of their commitment to civilizing forces. He sees that should he demand their allegiance now and not receive it, the conjurer's trick will be revealed and the magic will be gone for good. Finally, Jack. So back in chapter 2, when they were first discussing the beast, which then it was a snake, Ralph insists it doesn't exist, and Jack jumps in with the not at all helpful, but if there was a snake, we'd hunt it, kill it. So not really the point, but in this chapter, we see an echo of that same conversation, but this time, when Jack allows that the beast really might exist, it feels much more calculated and intentional. While Ralph and Piggy are hammering away, showing the beast as a scientific impossibility, and Simon is going all blazed out, like, maybe it's just us, man, Jack slides in sideways and seems to deliberately play on the fears of the kids. We're strong. We hunt. If there's a beast, we'll hunt it down. We'll come in and beat and beat and beat. So to my eye, this is no longer stupidity. This is strategy. Jack has realized that fear is his source of power in the group, and that candle of fear is something that he must keep alive. He stokes the flickering doubt within the children and positions himself and his hunters as their best and only hope for protection. The beast, or really the fear of the beast, has become the source of his power. In a lot of ways, he's learned the same lesson that Ralph has, that power is a delicate thing that must be protected. Jack is keeping a fire going, tending to it carefully. It's just not the one on the mountain. And that's chapter 5. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, check out my teaching unit and my other stuff. Next week, we turn to chapter 6, where the island gets a visitor, the boys storm a castle, and the hunters roll some rocks. All that and more next time on One Day Ahead.